Okay, when you're solving algebraically a quadratic equation, a second degree equation, if there's only a variable with an exponent and there's no regular variable, like there's no x in this, only an x squared, you can solve by taking the square root. It's the easiest of all the versions, but you can only do it if there's only an x squared. There can't be an x squared and an x. If there is, you're going to have to do another method. So your next page here has all these examples where there's only the variable squared, and that's it. Okay, so here's how we do it. Well, you know how when you're solving, the opposite of addition is subtraction. The opposite of multiplication, division. And then what this is a square. The opposite or inverse of squaring, square rooting. So I'm going to take this side and square root it. That's going to get me to x. Remember, when you're solving, you always have to do the same to both sides. So I could do the square root here. Now your directions will tell you either simplify the radical, which you did in Unit 9, or you can just, it will say round or estimate to the nearest tenth. So this one, I'm thinking it's 4 point something, about 4.5. Let's find out. Square root of 20. Okay, so let's say the directions, in fact, the directions don't say here. But let's do the decimal, let's do the decimal one. To the nearest tenth. So what would this be to the nearest tenth? Yeah, are you impressed? I said about 4.5. You like that? Yeah. Okay, but here's the thing. There's actually two solutions. Okay, remember when you graph it, you find two zeros sometimes. There's two solutions because it's either positive or negative 4.5. Okay, so you'll see the symbol written like this on top of each other. It's read as positive or negative 4.5. Or if we write it as a solution set, you could write it like this, or you would write one positive and one negative. Okay, so remember that will always be a positive and negative, because if I do negative 4 point, I'm just going to put in a few of these. I'm curious if it's going to get me 20. Let's see. Oops. Remember, when you square a negative, you need parentheses. Okay, so square it. Yeah, it got me really close to 20. It's because it's not exact. All right, so I get a positive. Or if I do the same thing, but make it negative, make it positive, delete. It's the same answer. So common mistake, people just put the positive answer. There's two solutions. When you're solving by taking the square root, it's possible that it was positive or negative. Okay, let's do another example. So this one was a little bit trickier. It had an extra step in here. You always want to get this alone first before you take the square root. So how do I get rid of the negative 4? Dividing. The opposite, this is negative 4 times y squared. The opposite is divide. Okay, I get y squared equals positive 25. And now the opposite of squaring, square root. Do it to both sides. And I get y equals plus or minus 5. Okay, remember you can use your store key to check this. Okay, let's do another one. Each time I'm just kind of adding another step in here. How about this one? What do you think you'll do first? You got to get m alone. Right, the first thing I want to do is get the x term, or the m term, the variable term alone. So that's 0. I have 2m squared equals 40 minus 15 is 25. Divide by 2, because 2 times, so the opposite is divide. 25 divided by 2 is 12.5.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the final step, it's always going to be the last thing you do here. Square root, and remember that you have two possible solutions, positive or negative, and 12.5, whoops,
3.5.
Square root 12.5. To the nearest tenth, yes, nearest tenth would be 3.5. It's going to go down, so. And you just have to read your directions. I mean, your directions could ask you to simplify the radical. You know, you might have to do that. Okay. Now I want to show you one example that actually won't get us a solution. Okay. Division, you're right. Got to get rid of the negative 3. I get negative 4. Okay. Well, when I take the square root of a negative number, my calculator is going to tell me nope. Non-real answer. Non-real answer. No, it didn't have to do with that. It had to do with, let's see if it goes to it. It's just telling us the square root is an issue. You cannot take the square root of a negative number. Remember, square root is what do I multiply by itself? Well, a negative times a negative is positive. Positive times positive is positive. You can't take the square root of a negative number. Okay, it's impossible. In Algebra 2, you'll learn that there is a solution. It's called imaginary or non-real. Remember my error message said non-real. It's imaginary. It's used in I. For Algebra 1, you just say no real solution. Okay, you don't have a solution. There's no solution. So like we just looked at an example where we graph something. If you graph this, this would be a solution where when you go to graph it, it never even touches the x-axis. Remember, a solution is where it touches the x-axis. It's a 0. Where does what's the x-intercept? So when it has no real solution, just to make the connection, if you went to graph this equation, you'd be looking at one where it's not touching the x-axis. Okay?